Everybody see at least one or two things they think they could work on to get perhaps a little more effective in their presentation. Remember, we talked about this being little things that make a big difference. We are going to start looking at how we can become more confident, more connected, more compelling speakers through our delivery by what Janelle and I call a ground-up approach. What this means is we're going to start with what we do with our legs and our body, then we're going to talk about our hands, talk a bit about voice, and then we're going to talk about eye contact. And that's how we're going to round out most of the morning. Right before we do lunch, we are going to give you an opportunity to present again, and you will see a difference in the second presentation from the first presentation. So we'll talk about that as it gets closer. What I'd like you all to do is a very quick activity. Would you all make this symbol? Here in North America, this means okay. Other parts of the world, this does not necessarily mean the same thing. Please go ahead and do this. I need everybody's participation if you wouldn't mind. Please go ahead and put this on your chin for me. Okay, great. Okay, go ahead. All right, so notice where most of you put it. What did I say? I said chin, and two of you did chin, 4 of you did cheek, and 1 of you did sort of this to sort of even it out. Why is Matt being mean and making us do silly things? What does this activity demonstrate for us? What do we pay more attention to? Visual cues. So what people do often is more important than what they say. And there's been some interesting research to say in excess of 50% of the meaning of our messages comes through nonverbals. So even if I am saying one thing, my nonverbals, my body language might be saying something else. And people tend to believe the body language. So we're going to spend some time talking about how we use our body, because we want our messages to be congruent. What I am saying and what I'm reflecting should be the same. And we're going to start by how we use our body and our stance. The very first thing people see about us is how we use our body, how we orient our body. So we're going to talk about what a good position looks like. And to do that, we actually have to participate. So everything between now and lunch is audience participation. So I'm going to ask you all to please stand up. Yeah, we're going to get our exercise. Go ahead and push those chairs in so you're standing behind your chairs. Some of these things have cables. Be careful. Nobody trips. Nobody gets hurt. Michael, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Excellent.
Sorry.
So, no worries. All right, so here's what I'd like to do. So we're going to talk about stance first. I'd like you all to stand as you normally would if you were waiting in line somewhere. Let's say you're at Starbucks. Let's say you're at the library. I don't know. How would you stand? I'd be like this. Actually, I'd probably be on my phone too. Okay? So this is our natural comfy position. This is where we go to when we're not thinking about how it is that we would stand. Okay? And this is perfectly fine. You probably all feel very comfortable in these positions. The reality is, though, that when your audience looks at you, you don't look that comfortable. Okay? Many of us are off center, off base. Many of us will have some kind of movement, or we're closed down because our arms are tight. This can be very, very challenging. So what we want to do is adjust ourselves so that from our audience's perspective, we look comfortable. Your job as a presenter is to make your audience comfortable. Because if your audience is comfortable, they're going to be able to pay attention to what you're saying. If they're not comfortable, they're going to be distracted. How many of you have ever seen a nervous speaker present? Most of us have. How do you feel when you see a nervous speaker present? 1 or 2 of you might really like it. Okay, but most of us don't, right? Most of you feel what? Uncomfortable, right? It doesn't feel comfortable. Right? So your job is to make your audience feel comfortable. And one way we do that is by orienting our body properly. So if you're not already doing this, will you please put your feet out so they're pointing out to the side, so they're splayed out like a penguin might have. Okay, this opens up your hips. This opens up your hips, and it makes it very easy to sway. Go ahead and put your weight on one of your legs with your feet splayed out like that. What happens to this leg? It gets tired. Yeah. And then what do you start doing? You lean to the other leg. Okay? And it's not unusual to see speakers swaying. And in fact, 1 or 2 of you saw yourselves doing this on your video. We sway. This is a self-soothing behavior. Little kids suck their thumbs. Grown-ups sway. Okay? If you don't believe me, go to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Go to the DMV any afternoon, and you're going to see a lot of people waiting in line swaying side to side because they're frustrated. They don't want to be there. Now, some people don't sway side to side. They actually have one foot in front of the other, and they rock forward and back. And at least one of you in here did a little rocking. Okay? This is making me as a speaker feel comfortable, but how do I look to you if I'm sitting here talking the whole time, swaying side to side? Do I look comfortable and confident? No. Okay, so here's a rule to keep in mind. What feels comfortable for you tends to look uncomfortable for your audience.
And it's distracting also.
And it's distracting, absolutely. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to eliminate the likelihood of that swaying. I'd like you to take your feet and turn them so they're parallel underneath your shoulders. It's like a railroad track is going right between your legs and you're on either side of it, so you're balanced. And just for grins, will you all come up on your tippy toes real quick and then settle down? That pulls your weight forward. This is a very balanced position. If you watch executives, if you watch politicians before they're introduced, this is how they stand. They stand like this and they look very confident. Now, it feels very uncomfortable. I'd like you all to just put your hands down by your side. Okay? Great. Okay, this is a very natural, confident position. So when you look at me, you're probably experiencing that awkwardness I told you about. When you look at me, you say, hey, Matt looks very comfortable in that position. He looks very confident. And yet you know you're in that exact same position. You're like, gosh, this feels really weird, right? And that's okay. We don't expect you to stand like this and speak like this, okay, for very long. But this is where we start. Any sport you have ever played has had an initial position. This is the initial presentation position. When you're waiting to be introduced, when it's about your turn to start, this is where we go. And matter of fact, if you ever go to a tailor to get your clothes fitted for you, how does the tailor have you stand? Like this. Your clothes are meant to fit on you in this way. So this makes you look good. Okay? Let's go ahead and have a seat. We're going to talk about this. I want to talk a little bit more about our stance and how we can orient ourselves. So balance is the key. We want to be forward and we want to be balanced, and we start here. But we don't stay here the whole time. This would be very awkward. Before I get on to talking about movement, I know at GTC they have lecterns. Okay? And everybody has a tendency to want to stand behind a lectern because it's protective. Right? You scare me. I now have a shield in front of me to protect me from you. But it's distancing. It's distancing. We can't see your body. We have a tendency to lean on it. Okay? We have a tendency to look down at the notes on it. We do not like lecterns. Now, usually when I say that, one or two people say, but I need my computer or I need to look at my notes. That's okay, but don't stay behind it the whole time. When you're introducing yourself, when you're giving an example or telling a story, move away from it. Maybe you have to do a demonstration, come back, do your work, and then get away from it. Sometimes people say, but the microphone, and I know this is not the case for GTC and a lot of the things you guys do here. You have the the wireless. Okay, but even if the microphone were attached, you can stand to the side and spin it. Being behind there makes you look small. It makes you look scared. You had a question, Kirk.
I answered, I figured out. I just wanted to make sure what a lectern is, but
it's a podium. Lectern, podium, same thing. Okay. So we don't like standing behind that. Okay. Let me talk about movement, because we do not stand like this and give our presentation the whole time. In a little bit, Janelle's going to come up and talk to us about what we do with our hands, but this is a good place to start. Movement, though, is very important. Movement engages and connects your audience. But we want movement to be purposeful, not what we call spurious. That's random movement. Many nervous speakers don't know what to do with themselves, so they sort of do this little shuffling and pacing. I call this the caged tiger. It's like when you go to the zoo and you see the wild animals, they just sort of go back and forth. It doesn't make you look comfortable. So we want our movement to be purposeful. I'd like to introduce you to 3 places we believe movement should be done. The very first place is at the beginning of a presentation. Most people feel threatened, and most people retreat. So many people start a presentation by saying, thanks for being here, I'm really excited. Okay? Notice how I step back and I bring my arms up to make myself small. This does not make me look excited, does it? How does it feel if I started this way? Thanks for being here, I'm really excited. Does that feel different to you? 6 inches back versus 6 inches forward conveys a totally different meaning. My hands are out. We're going to practice that in a little bit. Stepping into the threat, stepping into the presentation makes a big, big deal. When we record you the second time in a little bit, we're going to ask everybody to take a step in. We really want you to practice this and see what it looks like. Just stepping forward, one step, makes a big difference. So we step into the beginning. Another great place to step is during Q&A, question and answers. At GTC, there's a Q&A after each of your presentations. My assumption is you guys in HR, lots of questions get asked, right, at some point during the presentation. So when people have questions, the natural tendency is to retreat. So people will say, I can now take your questions. Anybody have any questions for me? Right? Because we don't want, why are questions so challenging to us? Why is Q&A hard? You may not know the answer. You may not know the question, and that's nervous too, right? Because you don't know what they're going to ask. So many of us retreat. How does it look if I say, does anybody have any questions I can answer on my topic? Again, it looks more authoritative because I'm stepping into the threat. So just taking a step forward. Now, we do a whole separate workshop on Q&A. We don't have time to do that today. But one of the tricks we talk about non-verbally is if somebody asks a question, so let's say Alec asks a question, I actually step towards him as he's asking the question. Not in a threatening way, not in his face, but I step to say, I really want to hear your question. Now, if I'm really close, like I am to Phoebe here, I wouldn't step in because that's actually intimidating. I might step back and say, oh, you have a question. But I'm managing the space, and it really shows a difference. So when you guys are doing GTC and you're on the stage, and somebody has a question, walk towards the side of the room where the question is. And then if somebody has a question over here, you walk over towards that question. It shows that you're receptive and that you're confident. So we step in at the beginning of presentations, we step in during Q&A. Does that make sense? The third place we recommend movement is during transitions of ideas. So it might look something like this. Now that I've talked about stance, next what I'd like to talk about is movement. So I physically transition as I verbally transition. It helps the audience to say we're on to something different, and it gives them something else to look at. The reality is human beings habituate quickly. We get used to seeing things. So if it doesn't change, we stop paying attention to it. Okay? So movement has your audience, grabs your audience's attention. However, I want you to apply the rule that stand-up comedians use. Stand-up comedians have a rule, and that is never walk during the punchline. Why do you think comedians have the rule don't walk during the punchline? What happens if you walk during a punchline? You miss it. You distract them, right? You distract your audience. If I'm telling you something really funny and I walk during it, you're paying attention to my movement, you might miss it. So stand-up comedians will walk during the setup, but when they give that funny line, they stop. The same thing is true for all of us. When we deliver an important point, we should stop. Because if I'm moving, I might distract my audience. We coach a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are trying to get funding, and we say, when you go for the ask, when you ask for that money, stand still. The most people don't want to stand still. They're really nervous. That's the part that makes them the most nervous. Give me the money, or give me the funding, or give me the head count. Whatever your ask is, most people want to move during that because it doesn't feel comfortable, but you don't look confident if you're moving during the most important part. So we recommend movement into a presentation at the beginning. We recommend movement into questions, stepping forward into questions, and movement during transitions of topic. Does that make sense? Now, when I want to walk in such a way, and I don't want you to script everything. So it's not, I wouldn't do something like this. Now that I've talked about standing, next I'd like to talk about, you don't want it to be that sort of scripted. So at some point you just sort of meander over there. But when we move, we want to make sure we land back in our balanced stance. I cannot tell you the number of speakers I've worked with who get this all. They start in a balanced way, they move during transitions, and then when they land, they get back into that sort of comfy position, and then all of a sudden they start rocking back and forth. So when you land, just orient your feet so they're parallel, just like we talked about, and that will keep you balanced. Okay. Questions on movement?
So I think the challenge that I've seen is mostly with the hands, where
Yes.
you put the hands. It's like
Yes.
having a stance like that with your feet flat on the ground,
That's
fine.
great.
Hands usually end up in the pocket, or
Right.
you want to hold on to your microphone.
Right.
Or,
So that's a really good question, and since we're running just a little ahead of time, I think we'll go right into it. So Janelle's going to come up, and she's going to talk to us about what we're going to do with our hands. And much like I had you get up and do stuff, she's going to have us get up and do stuff. And we're actually going to move around the room so we can do a little more work. These desks are too close together, but let's talk about hands.
Yeah, that was a great segue. So what have you seen presenters do with their hands? You were saying pockets.
Pocket is like the, yeah.
Okay, what else?
Back of the neck.
Oh, yeah. Right? I am tense. What else? Matt kind of talked about this already, but anything closed, right? Anything, I'm going to protect myself here. So we've seen all sorts of things happen. And what's funny is that most of the time when we do these workshops, this is like the number one question. What do I do with these things? It's like as if we've just sprouted them and they never existed before. So what we want to do is give you a couple of resting places to put your hands when you're not using them intentionally for gesturing. And we want to give you 2 go-to gestures that are going to connect with your audience. So let's talk about resting places first. So 2 resting places. The first is, and you'll see Matt use this one a lot, is to have your hands folded in front of you. Okay? This is a nice resting place, and it allows you to finish a thought or an idea. It's kind of a close to what you're saying. So when you come to the end of your point, this is a good place to end that point. What you want to be mindful of is not gluing your arms to the sides of your body, because what does this look like? I look like T-Rex, don't I? Right? This is really awkward looking. So it really has to be a relaxed, just hanging out here, not glued. So just kind of a relaxed. I didn't say clasped, because when I say clasped, people get into ringing, right? And this just looks like you're full of tension and stress. So this is a nice resting place to finish a thought. The other one is to have your hands drop at your sides, which is what Matt just demonstrated, right? It's a good starting place. So hands at the side. Again, you're not glued here because this looks weird, does it not? This looks uncomfortable, but this looks really natural. Those are the 2 resting places, all right? This is a good way to finish a thought or an idea. Yeah?
So is like hips bad?
I would try to stay away from this just because this is so open to interpretation. Right? What might somebody think if I was just doing this? Also, I'm compelled to do this as soon as my hands get on my hip. But what might you think about me? So, hey, welcome, guys. How's it going? I need some gum. I feel like I need to be chewing some. Right? Maybe it's a little too informal. Maybe it's a little too relaxed. I've heard cocky. What's up? How's it going? Right? That's a little, right? Maybe a little arrogant. So I would just try to drop them. I don't think it's the end of the world if they're here. Just notice it, drop them, right? That's all. Okay, so those are the 2 resting places. The 2, and I'm gonna get you up here in a minute to practice these. The 2 gestures that we really like, that we want to point out to you, is an open gesture like this. This is, hey, I'm open to questions, I'm happy to be here. And notice that my elbows are away from my body. So this is taking up space, it's big. If I do this looks weird, doesn't it? This probably feels okay, but this actually looks better. This will feel to you probably huge, but it doesn't look overly huge to the audience. This looks a little bit contracted, so it's about getting away from the body, getting your arms off your body. One of our colleagues says, keep your hands off your body, right? So if you find yourself touching yourself, you're too close to yourself, right? Keep your hands off your body. So this is one. The other one is an outward extension. This is an invitational gesture. What works really well on this is to use the pronoun you. This is an audience connecting technique, which we'll talk about later. So stand up for a moment. We're going to do a little exercise. I think the best way for us to do this, what do you think?
This room is awkward.
It is awkward.
Why don't we have, what do we got? We've got, can I have you 3 come around here, and we're going to face one of these folks as our partner, maybe this way?
Sure, yeah, that works. Okay. Good. So the 3 of you come with me. I'm going to demonstrate this with you.
I'll be a partner.
Okay.
You can just demonstrate.
Perfect. Let's come over here. So this is going to feel really contrived. We realize that. But the more that you practice this, it will become just second nature. But what we want you to do is see how this impacts your partner. Okay, so will you guys take a step back just because you're going to be walking towards these folks. So you guys are just there to relax and connect with one of these folks on this side. This side of the room is going to take a forward step toward the people across from us, and we're going to greet them. So we can say something like, good morning and welcome. I'm happy to be here, whatever it is you want to say. On 3, we're going to step toward them and give them some greeting with an open extension. right? Both hands this time.
Why don't we also say good morning and welcome? I think it gets confusing
Okay,
if I
let's do
can't
that.
focus if I hear
Too many options.
Too many.
All right, so good morning and welcome. Matt likes that one. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Good
Good
morning.
morning and
morning.
welcome. All right. So take a step back. We're going to do it one more time. So really connect with that person across from you. All right, on 3, once more. 1, 2, 3.
Good
Welcome
morning
and
and
welcome.
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 All right. So let's check in with these folks. How was that for you? What was your perception of these folks stepping into you and saying good morning and welcome? Did you feel like they were connecting with you?
Yeah, they really meant it.
Okay, like they really meant it? Okay, good. So we're going to have you guys do the same thing, all right?
Can I just add one thing? When we do our gestures, we want them to be above our waist. So even though we want them just a little bit above the waist. And the
Thanks.
reason is where our eyes focus. When somebody's speaking, we look at their mouth because that's where the sound's coming from. But the other thing that attracts our attention is movement. And if I start gesturing down here while I'm talking, or my hands are down in this way, it's just outside your peripheral vision, right? So all of a sudden, you know something's going on there, so you're looking down. I don't want you looking down here. I want you paying attention to my mouth. If I bring my hands up just here, you can see them in your peripheral vision and you're happy. So a couple of you, when you were stepping forward, your hands were low, and we just want them up a little bit. I'm not saying I'm king of the world. I'm just, just out there.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to do the same thing that these folks did on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good.
Very
Let's try it
nice.
one more time.
Yeah, that's a really good.
Really look at the person in their eyes. We're going to talk about eyes next. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Welcome.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good.
So how was this
That's
from
great,
this-
Michael. That's
from
really
this
good.
side of the
That
room?
was really good.
What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, it's better, especially the eye contact.
Okay.
It personalizes the greeting.
Good. Personalizes the greeting.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I agree.
Okay. So we're going to do one more. We're going to practice the invitational you gesture. So this is actually a very natural thing to do. When we are connecting with someone, a friend, a family, a colleague, we say, hey, I think you'll find this really important. We might say something like this. Or I think you're going to find this interesting. Right? That's a really conversational, natural thing to do. We want to bring that into our presentation. And we want to use the word you as much as possible. So this time we're going to do the same thing. We'll only do this once. We're going to step towards our partner and we're going to say, I think you'll find this important. And you're really wanting to connect with the eyes on the word you. And this feels a little choreographed at first, but you want to be conscious of bringing your hand out on the word you. So I think you'll find this important and keeping it there. If it's too fast, it starts to look like a cheerleading thing or something, right? It's not a dance move. It's, I think you'll find this important, and keep your hand there. So it's a forward extension. Again, like Matt said, it's above the waist. It's not here. I think you'll find this important. No. I think you'll find this important. Okay, ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3.
I think you'll find this important.
Good.
I dropped it.
That's all right. So when you step forward, what's important is that you bring your other foot with you to land in that really strong position. Otherwise, it kind of looks like, I think you'll find this important. Right? It's like another, right? Okay, so let's come over here. We're going to do the same thing, you guys. On 3. 1, 2, 3. I think you'll find this important. All right. So here's what I want. I want to make this observation, and you may or may not have noticed it. When we stepped in to this side of the room, we think you'll find this important. Some of you nodded, right? You actually responded to our invitation and you nodded. That is a nonverbal cue that people are connected to you. Same thing over here. When you said it to these folks, there was some head nods. All right, so that's a really good way to make the connection. The other benefit to this, to either of these gestures, is that it brings your voice to life a little bit and it brings some expression to your face, because it's kind of hard to say, I think you'll find this really important, right? You have to kind of try to be as dull as possible. I think you'll find this important, right? Your voice goes up a little bit, you might have a smile on your face, your eyebrows might lift, some magic happens. It's all connected. All right, good. Thank you so much. You guys want to take a seat? So, just to recap really quickly, the 2 resting places are where? First one is here, right? You're not playing with your rings or wringing your hands. And then the second resting place is by the sides. Good. I should have had you kept standing, but I didn't. What about the first gesture? first go-to gesture that we like. Open, above the waist, right? Yep, and then right in front of you. Okay. Matt, take a break? Okay, let's take a 10-minute. Does that sound good?
Yeah, we'll come back why don't we come back at 11?